Welcome to Sacred Spaces Advanced School of Ancestral Communication. This is Queen Carlenia Springer, and I am speaking to my Afro-Bricanu and Afro-Bright Kaitnu family, my African Black family, regardless of where we find ourselves on the planet, regardless of our ethnicity. Those names actually mean the male and female offspring of the Creator and the Creatress, descendant through the divine land, that first land that rose up above those most ancient primordial waters at the dawn of creation. And so within our name is encoded our identity. And that's why I say it doesn't matter where we find ourselves on the planet, we are indigenous to the planet. We are the mothers and fathers of humanity. I want to share with you a story from Soul Mark for Life from my book. This in this book, I had a series of coincidences to the point where I was like, no, somebody lied about something in this world. It's not that many coincidences, divine moments, if you will, that we experience. And so I started out, and I said this before, just telling the story about my trip to Brazil and Peru, where I was having experiences back to back to back. I couldn't control anything. I couldn't speak to anybody. My language was taken. It was taken while I was in a foreign country. They spoke Spanish and Portuguese, and I didn't speak any of that. And so people showed up when I needed help to get to my um, next destination, but I couldn't control it. And so all of these incredible experiences were just unfolding back to back, and I really didn't understand what it was. And when I got scared that I didn't have enough money traveling between countries because I had to stay an extra day in Peru before I went to Brazil, I got very concerned that I would not have money to buy a new ticket and I couldn't reach my family. All of that guidance, all of the messages, it shut down completely. The minute I was too tired, too exhausted, because I stayed up the whole night, um, wouldn't go to a hostel, what they call a hotel. I wouldn't go to a hostel because I didn't know if I knew I needed money to get to the next country. And because of that, I was just exhausted by the next morning. But in my exhaustion, everything, the guidance and people showing up started to flow again. And I literally did not know what that was. I didn't know that my ancestors and ancestresses had anything to do with it. I knew God was involved, but this was like so specific to the point of like ridiculousness. I'm like, there is not this much coincidence in the world. There's something else going on, because I was looking out and the world looked the same. Everything looked the same, but my experiences were magical, like literally magical. You couldn't make these things up. And I just didn't understand how people kept showing up time after time after time. Well, again, thinking that that story was the only one that I was going to tell in Soul Mark for Life, every time I went to close it down and say, okay, I want to publish this, I would be given more experiences in my life that was showing me the guidance that, um, showing me the places where I was being guided that I didn't recognize. They were like literally connecting the dots for me. And so they were showing me how they were always, God and the ancestors, ancestresses were always there. But because I didn't know my identity, I didn't know who I was, I just thought, oh, that's a random experience, or that's a real cool coincidence. I had no way of connecting the dots. I could teach people how to be present, literally to not be so bogged down by and worried by what happened in the past or what was going to happen in the future. I could teach people how to be present, and so that they could notice the coincidences in their lives and connect it to things that were relevant in real time. Like these were not just random experiences, but because, again, I didn't know who I was, I didn't know my identity, I didn't know the identity of our people. They were just like really neat experiences, and then it's like just back to life as normal. So I opened the book today, and well, a few minutes ago, And the story I opened to was when I was in college at the University of Maryland, and I met I met someone, and he was actually in my criminal justice class, and we went out a couple of times, and I think it was the third time he came over to my apartment and he said, "You know what? You're a really nice girl, so I think I have to tell you this." He said, "I have a dark side, and so I have to give you a choice whether or not you want to be with me." So I was like, "Well, nobody's perfect. We all have something going on." I was naive. I had no idea what he was talking about when he said a dark side. But it wasn't long after that I began to understand what a dark side was. See, I had an uncle when I was 16 years old. My uncle told me, "Don't ever deal with any man that drinks alcohol, and any man that puts his hands on you, let that be the last time. You walk away and don't you look back." Well, that first that first admonition that he gave me about dealing with a man that drinks, I ignored that. Right? Up until that time, I had not ignored it, but I ignored it. And so soon after him telling me, "Oh, he has this dark side or whatever," he I can remember, I think he probably went to get a beer or something. And I don't remember all, it was so many different experiences. But what I do recall is that when he would drink, it wouldn't be long after before his personality would change. Like it would really get dark. It would really, and I didn't know what I was looking at. Like his talk would get violent. His words, he would be violent in his demeanor. Like his anger would be just like out the roof. If he was around other people, he would be wanting to fight them. And it was very strange because in class he's like a straight A. He was a straight A student. He did very well in school. He had a good job and all of that in college. But there was this other side to his personality, and he must have accepted it because he told me he had a dark side. And because I didn't know what I was looking at, I I had many kinds of encounters where I was like scared because I would see his eyes change to like literally two pools of darkness, and I couldn't reach him. And I didn't know. I literally did not know what I was looking at. I thought he had a personal. I was like, well, I don't know. Maybe he had a rough childhood or something. I ended up marrying him, and I married him because I was scared to say no. And it was the one time I wanted my parents to step in and tell me don't do this. And they did not step in and tell me don't do that. Maybe they thought I wouldn't listen. I don't know, but I was so scared and so weak on the inside. I wanted my parents to like give me a reason to say um, to for me to be able to leave that relationship. I didn't know that I was dealing with wayward spirits. I had no idea. And so ended up getting married. And I remember one day, I think it was actually Mother's Day weekend. We had a baby, and so his mother had the baby. And that weekend, he was just drinking, drinking, drinking a whole lot. He wasn't, and this time he wasn't even upset or mad or anything, just drinking a whole lot. And we were supposed to go over his friend's house to play cards with him and his wife. And at the time, we didn't have a phone, so he went out to use the payphone to call his friend and say, "You know what? I'm too drunk. We can't drive over there. It won't make sense. So I'm just going to, we'll pass this time." For whatever reason, when he left the apartment, I put the chain on the door. I don't know why, but I put the chain on the door. So when he came back, he put the key in the door and he went to open it, and the chain stopped the door from opening, and he put his fist through the door. And I was like, I was right at the door, so I'm like, "What are you doing? Like, you could have hit me. That's crazy. What are you doing?" And so I took the chain off the door, and I began to walk down the hall to the bedroom, and I heard footsteps behind me. And when I turned, this guy, like, he hit me like in my face like he was hitting a man, and I didn't even expect it because he didn't say anything, and I was so shocked. I'm like, "Oh my god!" And I literally was like, "What the heck are you doing? You just hit me!" And and I'm still walking to the bedroom, but now he's walking even faster, behind me, and he's not stopping, and I fall backwards on the bed, and he's like 6'1" or something, very big. I fall backwards on the bed, and he literally jumps up on the bed, start to scream and curse and stuff at me, and say something about smashing my face in the concrete or whatever. The story's in the book, but I get so scared. I start to yell like, "Oh my God, he's trying to kill me!" And I realize in that moment, well, we're in a basement apartment, nobody can hear me. Without even looking, I automatically take my hand and I just reach back behind me, and this was like without thinking. I reached back behind me, and my hand goes around a glass that's on the side table, and I throw the glass. Now this time I'm looking in his eyes. His eyes are dark. They're just like two pools of darkness, right? Like I can't reach him. Nothing I say, it's like he's not there. Well, I reach back, and my hand moves around this glass, and I throw the glass, and we had a floor length mirror, and that glass that I had in my hand shattered that mirror. How in the world did I do that? I'm like laying on the bed. I can't even see where the mirror is. I didn't know there was a glass behind me. I just automatically moved my hand back, felt that, and threw it. And then when that when the glass shattered, it's like something happened to him, because all of a sudden, like those dark eyes, they left, and it was like he was back. Now I had no idea what I was looking at. I thought he was crazy. I didn't know what that was. I literally just thought he was crazy. And then he looked like he didn't even understand what he had done or what had happened, and why he's like standing on top of the bed, and then he just gets real quiet and begins to back up, and he gets a blanket, and he goes and he curls up like a baby on the couch, and he lays down. So, that was actually the only time he ever hit me. But it was what was strange to me was that we didn't even have any argument. There was no discussion, nothing. And I didn't know about these spirits. I knew they call alcohol spirits, but I didn't at that time. I knew nothing, because nobody in my family really drank, and I didn't know anyone that behaved in that manner. I wasn't used to people whose personality would flip and switch, like on a dime. I didn't. I literally did not know what that was. And so I'm saying this to say there are some of you that are in you're in relationships where you're experiencing domestic violence, and and you can see for yourself the switch in the personality, and people don't always understand why, when they try to help you, you might leave, but then you go back. Well, it's because you're dealing with two different, say, entities. You're dealing with the person, and that's the person you might have liked or fell in love with or whatever. But when that person is overshadowed by whatever spirit walks with them or moves through and takes over them, that spirit is moving against you and is controlling the mind and the actions of that individual. And unless you know what you're dealing with, you can't handle that. And that's why so many people lose their lives. They lose their lives, and and their friends and family may say, well, you know what, we tried to help, her, we tried to help him, because it's not always just women, it's men that get killed in these type of situations as well. Again, if we don't know who we are as Afro Wakanda and Afro Right people, as African Black people, the offspring of the creator and the creatress, we don't know who we are. We don't know how we operate. We don't know how to back these spirits up, because we have to cleanse, we have to purify ourselves. So there's situations that you have to get out of to to preserve your life and the life of your children. Because some of these people, they're not killing you. They're killing the children. They're killing the kids, and you don't have the discernment to see that. You think they're not going to harm your kids, and they just harm you until your child ends up badly hurt or dead. And so the first thing is to protect yourself the best way that you can, if you have someone to help you, and then you can take the time, because in the midst of that, you cannot be trying to figure out who, what your identity is in the midst of that type of violence. You have to preserve your life. You have to protect yourself, secure your borders, your boundaries, remove yourself from these situations that are life threatening. Ask for help. There may be people, and I know some people are in some very difficult situations where there may not be someone that you can reach out to. But when you begin to literally, if you have the space to create an altar, even if it's out, go out in nature. You may not be able to do that at home, but go out in nature and begin to speak to the God of your understanding and ask to be shown who you are and how to protect yourself and who to talk to. You will be guided because you were put here for a very specific purpose. You were not put here for someone to take your life. You are a temple of the Most High Mother and Father God. You are a space where the spirit forces in creation govern and maintain the different organs and organ systems within your body as well as within the universe. And so you have a very specific purpose and a function. And if you have children, if you can't protect yourself, how in the world can you protect your children? So, um, again, many people don't understand the back and forth, but I know people leave. They leave because of some, they don't want to. Obviously, they're trying to protect their life, but then they find themselves in a position where they can't feed themselves or their children, and they take the chance to go back. And so it is when we begin to, those of us who care about these different issues begin to create systems of communication to be able to help those of you that are in these positions. Then there's a network that you may not be able to go to them, but they may have a resource. They may be able to help pick you up and take you somewhere temporarily where you're safe. um, there are a lot of resources. There are a lot of women who have come out of these type of circumstances and that are seeking to help in any way that that they can. But in order for you to really protect yourself, you have to come out of that situation, but you have to use wisdom in coming out. But I want you to understand that you're not fighting that individual. There's a spirit or spirits that have taken them over, and when they take them over, that individual will even believe that the thoughts and the actions that they carry out are them, because that's how closely they walk with them. And so, because we're not operating within the protection, within the jurisdiction of our culture, we're mostly wide open for any spirit that passes through to attach themselves to us, to begin to speak and act as us, and literally begin to fool us within our own mind, within our own domain. This is our throne. Our minds are our throne, and what goes on in our minds dictates what we create out here in the world. I had a mentor that taught me, I am the thinker, I think the thought, I create the thing. So we have a right and a responsibility to review our thoughts. As Afro-Wakanda and Afro-Kaitu people, we have a right and a responsibility to review our thoughts. You have to know what you are thinking, because whatever is your dominant, whatever your thoughts are that are most dominant in your mind is what will play out in your reality. Literally, if you begin to study the nature of consciousness, that is a reality. That's universal law. Whatever we put our attention on, it expands. So if you are feeling depressed, oftentimes, really, what that you can handle your own energy. That depression is when you are surrounded by various entities that have attached themselves to you and that are literally weighing you down. Those doors have to be closed, and there's certain ways and means in order to close those doors. And we have that within our culture. And some of us, um, deliverance ministries, for instance, they know how to create a space between you and those spirits. But then there's a process afterwards. You can't, just go to church and they get that entity off of you and go home and just think everything is okay. No, it may have backed up, but it's still there. So you have things that you have to do on a continual basis to cleanse and clear your mind, to clean your spirit, to purify yourself, so that you come to a place where you are literally repelling these spirits. We're not supposed to be attracting disordered spirits. We only do that when we ourselves are operating in disorder. So we are operating in disorder because we aren't operating in accordance to how we were created, and that's not our fault. That's we this is what we this is a situation we were born into. But today there's no excuse for us not being able to find out the lies that we were told, not being able to find out what was taken, not being able to implement um, the 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 actions and to do the things that we need to do to restore ourselves. There's no excuse. There's absolutely none, other than maybe you're not interested in doing it, but it's costing you. I promise you, it's costing you your peace of mind every day. But I wanted to just come and talk about those spirits, and we'll talk about it more. But I'm talking about that in Soul Mark for Life. We talk about those entities, because when we operate, and y'all have heard me say this before, when we only have a certain amount of time to operate in disorder, because the Abosom, the Orisha, the Bodu, the spirit force in creation, who governs our divine consciousness, who was assigned to us by Mother and Father God, they will back up off of us. And at a certain point, they will return to Mother, Father God, and they will give a report. And when they give that report, that's it. There is no more coming back from that. So now you're like a drop of water, right? That's like your divine consciousness is now like released into the ocean, and you will never be able to find that individual drop of divine consciousness, which literally contain everything, your divine assignment that you were supposed to execute in this world, and for which that Abosom, that Orisha, that Voodoo was the guide for how to execute your function in this world. So when they leave, you know you are a spirit. You're like a spirit without a function, without a purpose anymore. You're a spirit slated for reabsorption. You lose your individuality. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his own soul? You would have lost your soul. And so I'm here to remind you of who you are, as little gods on a mission, streaming from afar. Wake up, dear God, you fell asleep into the arms of despair, distrust, and grief. Turn within, look deep and clear into the jewel of light that was always there. Call forth your wisdom, power, and dominion. It is time to take back your kingdom. Kings and queens, it's time to rise. Wake up, royalty. Open up your eyes. Ashe.